Tesla is expanding in Asia. Elon Musk signed a nickel deal with Indonesia, and there are semi-confirmed rumors about a battery factory and production facility opening up there. The Indonesian government is pushing hard on EV investment, so a good partner for Tesla. So to give us a perspective on Tesla's success in Asia, I've invited the Tesla and financial YouTuber Darren Yoong from Singapore to the podcast. Hi Darren, how about you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Thank you for having me here, Yan. I'm based in Singapore. My name is Darren. I've started actively talking about Tesla a year ago on YouTube. In my day job, I'm in sales. I'm in tech sales. That's what I do as my job. And I invest in Tesla. So while I talk a lot about Tesla as an investment, I spend a lot of time with former and current employees, users, drivers, also visiting their factories and service centers just to really understand. Because I believe that if you invest in something, you must truly understand the products and services. So that's me. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, great to have you on. You mentioned that you invest into companies. You invest in Apple, for example, in many tech stocks. So I'm very curious because we see the volatility in Tesla right now, up and down all the time. What do you think about the share price? Do you think it's justified right now, or in those uncertain times we have right now? And in what companies you are invested? That would be very interesting to hear for the audience, I think.
Okay, so 85% of my public investments are on Tesla stock. I've got another 12, 13% on Apple and 2% mostly on genomics. The macro environment right now, especially as we enter the second half of 2022, I think most stocks are down, most investment assets are down. It's not just Tesla. Tesla just happens to be a multiplier. When things go down, it goes down even more. When things go up, it goes up even more. And I believe many of you who are watching this, you're probably long-term Tesla investors. There are far fewer Tesla day traders. Actually, Tesla is a great stock for trading as well if you're into that. So I'm a long-term investor. I take a 10-year view on it, 10-year perspective. Whether it's 600, 1200, it's a rounding error. We look at where it's going to be 10 years from now. So that's how I see it. It's very hard for many because there are many people who started investing in 2020 during the beginning of COVID, where we got a lot more time to reflect on things.
Yeah.
And I was one of those investors. I only started investing in Tesla in August 2020. So this year, there was, I think, a chart showing how the net capital, like retail investor inflow into stocks have actually reset in recent months as people started pulling out. They get scared. What do I do right now? And I think this moment is where you really see, is your conviction borrowed from someone else like watching a YouTube channel, or is a conviction from you, deep rooted in, as Elon likes to say, first principles?
Yeah, very interesting with the COVID thing, because it's funny. I started at the beginning of 2020, a little bit before COVID really started off globally. Yeah, because of Stephen Mark Ryan's videos, I've started. And with the reveal of the Cybertruck, I knew I was watching Tesla very closely for some years, and for about 5 years before that. And then I got the opportunity to invest, so I did it right away, and was very fast. Yeah, it was very interesting times, but interesting what you said with the retail investors. That's really, they had their time. Many of them had their stimulus checks also from the US. Maybe they just put it into the stock market. I think that was also a little bit a driver maybe for younger people to start to invest. Are you bullish on Tesla? So how do you think about it in the near term and the long term? What do you see?
I'm bullish in both the near and long term, because as many of the guests have shared, their pace of innovation is far ahead of anyone else in not just the auto industry, but many other potential industries that they want to play in. Even in robotics, if someone considers Boston Dynamics as a leader in robotics today, it's now managed part of Hyundai Group. I think the way that Tesla bot's going to come out, we're going to see a working prototype in September. The pace of innovation in Tesla is very significant, and that's very encouraging because in today's world, it's not sufficient to be big. In fact, big can be a liability. You move slower like the Titanic. But if you're big and fast, that's deadly. That's a true asset. So I'm very bullish, and I've got the rare opportunity to speak with Tesla employees in Giga Berlin, in Giga Texas, service centers, different showrooms, and the kind of commitment is very consistent. The kind of passion for the mission is very consistent. And this is easy to say, but it's hard, very, very hard for a company to implement. Now, Tesla doesn't have a monopoly for passion. So I'll give you an example. Yan, have you been to Singapore before?
No, never. I went to Vietnam. That's the only place I was in Asia. So yeah.
So you probably have heard from friends that like Changi Airport is probably considered one of the best airports in the world. It's like
Yeah.
how Singapore Airlines is considered a really good
Yeah.
airline.
Yeah.
And when you think of the passion for the mission of employees in like a Changi Airport, so the parent company Changi Airport Group, and when you talk to the cleaners, not just the CEOs or the senior leadership, but even the cleaners, people who are cleaning the bathrooms, the cafes, and I see them very, very passionate and ask them why. So, oh, my job isn't just to clean a toilet. My job is to set Singapore's first and last impression whenever someone visits our country. And he said the level of care, even at the lowest level of work, I see that in Changi Airport Group, but I also see that in Tesla at all levels. You've all heard stories, even how the Europe vice presidents or leaders will be cleaning cars, washing cars. These kind of things happen, and everyone's doing a lot. So very, very good culture.
Yeah, that's interesting points. You've mentioned that you've been to the factories and got a little bit an insight. Maybe you can tell us about your journeys when you visited, especially the Giga Texas opening.
I'm based in Singapore, and we first visited Giga Berlin that was October last year when Elon Musk was down there. So that was the first big opening party for the new Gigafactories. And through that experience, which was amazing, it was like I believe there's this culture like housewarming, right? You want to greet in the neighborhood. So actually, most of the guests who came to Giga Berlin were not Tesla fans. Most of them were the local residents of Berlin, Brandenburg. And it was really normal families. Some of them had never seen a Tesla before in their life. They were children, they were fun fairs. And I think it was a great way for Tesla just to welcome themselves to the neighborhood. Let people see, we're here as a good neighbor. And I saw was very revealing, like the average age of like the shift managers or like some of the engineering managers, it's probably like late 20s. Whereas the average age for the equivalent in other auto companies would be in their 30s or 40s. Again, it's not about experience is no guarantee for, age is no guarantee for experience. Youth is no guarantee for bigger. But if you think of the level of effort you can put in, the level of energy you can put in a very fast-paced environment, and a lot of ideas that come in, that may really, it puts Tesla in a very different spot. So that was very eye-opening. We got a chance to speak to many people there. I'm originally from Malaysia. I saw a Malaysian working in Tesla Giga Berlin as well, so that was nice. Then, earlier this year when Elon announced in March, okay, we're doing an opening party in Giga Texas. Found very good friends who managed to get us tickets there. So we went over there, and I've got to say, like, when we visited Giga Berlin, that was the biggest building we've ever seen or been in. Giga Texas, as you know, is about 50% bigger in size. The first impression was when we took the airplane, Southwest Airline, landing to the Austin airport, and you could see the factory on the left side as you land. So get the window seat if you're going to Austin, sit on the left side, left window, that's where you'll see Giga Austin. Huge, huge. It's like the only visible building you can see. So going in there, this time the vibe was a bit different. Giga Texas opening party was more for Tesla fans. So a lot of, whether it's people from the Tesla community, people who are owners, and they've got a great factory tour as well. And of course, they've got the 4680 battery production there. We saw a lot of people we see on YouTube, like Dave Lee, some of my friends saw Rob Mauer, and a whole range of people. That was amazing. Yeah.
That's interesting what you said, that you perceive that the culture is so consistent around it, and also what you said about the how Tesla handled the different openings. Maybe we can go back a little bit to Asia again. You've mentioned that you're also very bullish on Tesla getting into the robotics space, and that's also a space that we could explore because Honda was one of the first to really did a good concept of their, I don't know what is called, the robot, the small robot they did.
Asimo.
Asimo, yeah, that was the name. And also with hybrids, Toyota was very fast with hybrids, for example. So the Japanese companies are normally very technology focused and try to push the envelope in their concepts. So they have many concepts. Why do you think that now Tesla is also seem to be more innovative in comparison to the Japanese company? I don't really know why. Maybe it's because of the size of the companies. I don't really get it. Maybe you have some information about that.
I think this is not unique to Japan. So those of us in sales roles, we have this term called complacent prosperity. If you're doing well, there is no urgency to change. So Nokia, Kodak had complacent prosperity. Today, the complacent prosperity is in Toyota, Honda. I think Volkswagen does not have that much complacent prosperity because the leadership is trying to change despite a very complex structure. So when you are a market leader for so long, when you've been told so long that you've been doing a great job, companies like Toyota have books written about their just-in-time system, the Toyota way. You are seen as a legend in the industry. After a while, you start to think, yeah, I'm really good. Everyone should follow me. I've got no problem. And especially in your home market, if you're so strong in your home market, because Japan's a very unique market. What happens in the rest of the world may take decades to materialize in Japan. If you look at the way people use the internet or flip phones there, it's very different, or the way they use cars there. So because of that, hungrier companies, especially hungry founder-led companies like Tesla, have an opportunity to move very quickly, iterate, fail, and succeed. And also comes back to in Japan, the culture, it's a bit more conservative. We want success and we do our best to avoid failure, especially public failure. No public humiliation. Like saving face is very important in a lot of Asian cultures.
Yeah, that's a huge point, I think, because in Germany, I perceive it's similar like that. It's also about pride and saving face. Also, it's the failure culture that you can't do mistakes. And if you do mistakes, it's seen as a very bad thing. And I think that's a little bit similar with Japanese culture as well, that when you have to work very hard and you have to comply with rules also, and don't think too much out of the box because it's not safe to think out of the box. And in Germany, for example, you have to comply with, it's so complicated, the rules are so complicated just to secure everything, because they think about every little scenario where danger could happen or something is a little bit risky. I mean, risk assessment is also done by Tesla, but they take the risk more or less. They look at the probability and just try it. I talked with Alex Voigt, for example. Also, he's a German Tesla specialist who's looking at Tesla very closely since long years now. So long in the Tesla community. And he also writes for Clean Technica, for example, the website and stuff like that. And he also analyzed that it's even more risky not to take risks in the future because you see the disruption happening. And we saw it with, you mentioned Kodak, for example. That was also a German company that didn't make it really much. They had a big factory also in Germany, and they closed down. And that's something that stands before them if the competition doesn't change. Like you said, for example, Toyota and Honda and the culture there. I believe that Tesla's culture is the biggest advantage they have, really, because they are so lean and so agile. And I've talked with Joe Justice, for example, about agility, and it's crazy to see how different it is, because you have to make mistakes. You have to address the mistakes, and they're not happy about mistakes, but they are necessary for innovating, and that's their top priority at Tesla. The companies like Toyota, for example, they are established, and why do they have to change? They produce 10 million cars a year. They see themselves as leaders, but now we have a technology disruption. And I mean, it's scary to hear that Toyota says, "Oh, we're not focusing on EVs," and still they're hesitant. Also BMW, for example, they are not as big as VW or something, but BMW also, the CEO Zipse says he doesn't want to make this bet. He doesn't want to make the bet on going full electric till 2035. And interestingly, in Europe, for example, they regulated this going forward from 2035, I think. You cannot buy internal combustion engines anymore. And BMW wants to produce 50% of their fleet still internal combustion engines at 2030. So maybe they lobby and try to push the date a little bit away. They could do that. I think that's maybe 2040, but you see this technology disruption, and the adoption is still so slow. But what do you think? Do you see that the legacy auto can really switch? And if they can, which company do you think is in the best position to do that? That would be very interesting.
I think all of them will switch. Now, whether they want to switch or not is a different story, but all of them will switch. And not all of them will disappear. So like Stephen Mark Ryan was saying, they'll probably get bankrupt or bought out. Now, some of them will be like BlackBerry and Nokia. Both companies still exist in very different forms today. Kodak still exists in a very strange form today as well. So some of them may not disappear, they just become a very different niche. Now, a lot of these companies, it's also important for us to understand why are they the way they are. Sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's organization. And there's this saying we have, engineer friends, API, assume positive intent. Why do all these processes with German, Japanese automakers exist? Because they value a lot the craftsmanship in what they do. They take care a lot, they care a lot, they want it to be very good, very consistent, and the process enables consistency. But in a world that is changing, that strength becomes a liability. I think the car companies, the automotive companies that by far are going to succeed, you've heard this in many places, will be the Chinese auto companies. Why? They are hungry to change. The government has a national priority on AI, by far the most AI patents in the world. It is a strategic country priority. Country priority. That means the leadership wants us to be, or China to be a leader in AI. Automotive self-driving is also another technology priority in one of the top 5 in the countries as well. So the government's supportive. Then you've got the people. When you do a survey of like, what do you think about self-driving cars? Let's say in Germany, Japan, or US, or Singapore, the support from the public will probably be 20-30% of people support it. But the majority will still be quite skeptical. That same survey in mainland China, 70-80% of people say, yeah, why not? So it's also history, like the people in mainland China, they've seen so much growth and prosperity because of innovation, technology, that they're a lot more willing to embrace it. And so when people are more receptive, less lawsuits on self-driving, FSD, the reality is full self-driving cars are probably going to exist in Chinese cities first for 3 to 5 years before they appear anywhere else. There will be pilots in the US or in Singapore in pockets, but mass adoption, it's going to be in Chinese cities first. So I think Chinese EV companies or car companies are generally doing well. Actually, practically every Chinese car company is an EV company now. No one's questioning EVs. I think the next strongest one would be probably the Korean car companies. Hyundai is doing a good job. Their EVs like the Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, great reviews. They are worthy competition to the Model Y. Talking about the Model Y, Yan, today is a very prosperous day. I know it's morning in Germany, but we just launched the Model Y for official orders in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan today.
Yeah, that's awesome. A celebration day.
So Korean car companies, especially Hyundai, they seem to be on the right track. They're innovating a lot. Then I think could be Volkswagen is by far the most focused on the EV transition. Actually, Porsche, the Porsche Taycan is one of the top 3 selling EVs in Singapore.
Ah, interesting.
Really popular. The waiting time for a Porsche Taycan is 6 to 8 months in this country. It's pretty insane. The Singapore car market's a bit distorted because of the local tax system, but it's a good signal that Porsche is doing a good job. Then I think you've got a range of different American companies, Rivian, Lucid, more niche than Tesla. They're trying to expand downwards, but those would be the few that I think have the brightest future right now.
It's interesting that you also mentioned Porsche, for example, because Porsche is also inside of the VW group, but Porsche is seen more or less they can do what they want. So they don't even use the Artemis platform, the EV platform of VW. They have their own platform because they pull in the most money, the highest revenue. They really leave them alone, and just because they operate good. And they don't try to regulate Porsche. So that's why they are so different. And like you said, I think the competition from Asia that you see, especially from China and also from South Korea, is interesting to see. And I don't know really about the software on the cars. I assume that they are a little bit better than the software from VW, for example. They have huge problems in the Chinese adoption because of that, because they look at the car and say, okay, where are the smart features? What's the software? And this really grinds my gears, and I'm so almost embarrassed how Germany really slept with software. And I think it was in the 90s where all the software companies, the startups, left Germany because the regulation was so hard. Right away, they regulated the market. And that's why many said, no, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley or something. And then they left. And we have SAP, for example, a huge company that is more in the industry sector, so very custom software for different use cases, a very huge company. But in producing like really applications and the newer stuff that you see also in the EV space, because it's like a mobile phone. You have to develop an operating system for cars that is, from the usability, a little bit more like your iPhone, for example. It's very important to do that. And then I see the interfaces, and it looks like navigation systems from 2003 or something. It's, you know what I mean, with the buttons and 3D buttons.
Yes.
And for me as a designer, it really grinds my gears because I'm also in the design space. So I see that and I think, okay, what kind of usability is that? What's your target group? I don't get it really. I understand that they have, especially Mercedes, for example, has a very conservative, like niche customers also. But still, I don't get it. What do you think about software in the cars? That would be interesting for me to hear.
So I think the worst thing that we want our users or consumers to see is our org chart shouldn't be apparent in our products. It shouldn't be apparent that our hardware and software is different. Your drivetrain or different parts of the car, you know that they're clearly not speaking with each other. So when you look at a device like an iPhone, it's really one team, one vision. Or even a Tesla, it's one team, one vision. Everyone's coming together. As Joe just did say, like 60 part changes per day. So I think a lot of this is innovation is not just a process, it's also a culture. The CEO of a company can't go to everyone in a Monday all hands and say, okay, Yan, we're going to be 20% more innovative this month. Do it. No. It's like the beatings will stop until morale improves, right? So I think the culture of innovation is underappreciated in a lot of companies and culture and also just countries. And I think that's what Elon and his companies do really well. Like they encourage the culture of innovation. And the culture is a lot in mindset. It's not just the hard work or the steps or a manual, but it's the mindset. So in innovative companies, their relationship with failure is the more I fail, the more I learn what not to do. I know what the breaking point is so that I can go as close to the breaking point as possible. But that's a culture, that's a mindset. And it comes across as very fluffy or very weird to a lot of corporations, business people. So I think because of that, a lot of companies are not going to realize companies like Tesla overtaking them. Which comes to another point, the way our mind is wired, I think. We think in linear terms. A cheetah is coming to catch us, it's going at this speed, we need to run at that rate. But exponential rate, like folding a piece of paper 42 times to go to the moon, it's hard for us to think about. And Tesla's pace of change is not linear, it's exponential. People just don't see it yet. Yeah, so that's how I feel.
Yeah, that's 100% how I feel as well. And it boggles me. It's really crazy to see how the news also goes into that topic. It's almost like Elon Musk is a distraction. He pulls so much attention. And so it takes the focus away from Tesla more or less. Also with the Twitter deal, what does he want to do? I assume that many of the steps Elon Musk does, it's not impulsive. Many people think that he's impulsive and have impulse of, it's Monday, I'm going to buy Twitter. No, I think he has plans of that like 10 years, like in a very long time horizon. So it's interesting to see how it is. That's why I really like your channel. So to everybody, please subscribe to Daren's channel, because when you talk with engineers, for example, that's where you see what's happening at Tesla, for example. Or I talked with Joe Justice, for example, who has a really inside view on how the automation functions in Tesla. And many people really still don't get that Tesla is not just a car company. I know we trade the stock like it's overvalued if you look at just the cars they produce. Oh, it's just 0.2% or something from the whole car market, or 1, 2, 3%. Yeah, but exponential growth doesn't work that way. You have to look at the exponential growth, and even if Tesla misses its targets, maybe like 1 year or 2 years, it doesn't matter in the long run. You see they have like 60% growth a year, and nobody seems to care in the media space. So they look at Elon Musk more, and okay, that's going to produce some clicks. It's maybe because of the media economy we have today. But yeah, it's interesting that it's overlooked, and that's why it's so important to also listen to channels like yours, and to listen to the engineers, especially because they work there. That's their day-to-day job, and also people from the industry who look at Tesla is very important. Like other engineers from different companies who maybe just buy the car and enjoy the car and have a perspective on that. And Tesla is executing very well. So I wanted to know, you've talked about the EV adoption in Singapore also. How do you feel about the adoption in Asia? So also, like, you interviewed some Chinese people also on your channel that have a Tesla, and how they enjoy it. What do you think about the Asian culture and the adoption of the Teslas, for example?
You'll have to separate Asian adoption with Greater China and the rest of Asia Pacific. Greater China is far ahead. It's almost at 20% adoption this year right now. So it's going to probably hit like Norway levels in the next 5 years. That one I'm very certain, because there is no doubt everyone, the companies, the car companies, the people, the buyers, the government, they're all heading that direction. So Greater China, very ahead of EV adoption. I'll say on par with most of Europe. Not Norway levels, but most of Europe, where Europe is right now. For the rest of Asia Pacific, it's actually quite slow. It's a laggard. So for the rest of Asia Pacific, will be markets where BMW will still be selling ICE cars in 2030, 2035. Singapore is very late to the EV adoption. I think most of your viewers may not have heard the Tesla story in Singapore. Tesla set up an office here more than 10 years ago, with the thought that, the hypothesis that Singapore has this reputation. You read in business books, very progressive, Lee Kuan Yew, long-term vision. So Tesla thought, why not, right? Great place to set up. But then the government was not supportive then. Tesla actually closed the office. They closed a small office 10 years ago. Then they re-entered Singapore only last year. The official sales of Tesla in Singapore only started July last year. That's pretty insane. July 2021 in Singapore. When you talk to like ambassadors or people from all around the world, business leaders, people see Singapore as like a real life Wakanda. It is like a magical place where it's clean, it's efficient, it's one of the best places to do business. Yet, EV adoption, far behind. But now it's catching up quickly. So, the EV adoption as percentage of new car sales in Singapore in 2020 was 0.3%. Basically, almost no one was buying an EV. Last year, it was 3.8%. About half the cars sold, EV sold, were Teslas. And Tesla was only selling one model officially, Model 3. That's all. There were some parallel imports of the Model S and X, no Model Ys. Then today, we just launched the Model Y. This year to date, our EV adoption in Singapore is 8.4%. As people talk about inflation, rising fuel costs, that's going to encourage, not discourage, EV adoption. So I think Singapore is going to end this year at maybe 10, 12% EV adoption. Next year is going to be at least 20%. And there's the network effect. There's a lot of myth busting and education in EVs in Asia Pacific. So people don't have it say, oh, Yan, what's going to happen with the battery? Is it going to die after 3 years? Or can I charge under the rain? Will my car explode if it's too hot? So all these myths will only be debunked when the first family member, the first friend gets an EV like a Tesla or an ID4, drives it, and say, you know what, I'm still alive. My battery is still here after 3 years. I know it sounds silly, but that's what parts of Asia Pacific, especially outside of Greater China, is like right now. So I'll say it's further behind. And that's important because 60% of the world's population is in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the adoption rate, like you said, in Europe, it's very great that you see the steep. Norway is very leading, like you said. On my channel, I focus more on the German market or Europe market, of course, because I'm located here. And many viewers of mine always said, you never talk about Asia or never talk about the EV adoption in China, or Chinese startups really are a competition for Tesla also, especially people who still don't see Tesla as the fanboys, you could say it like that. Yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't know that Singapore was so late to the party. That's a new information for me. It's very interesting to hear that. And maybe we can transition now to Indonesia, because it's close, at least.
Yeah, it is.
From my perspective, from my European perspective. The Indonesian government signed a nickel deal with Tesla, and they really push hard to go into the EV space. They have a project I don't know on which island it was, but they have a project there for EV production, and many companies, foreign companies, want to settle there and start their EV production because it's logical. They are at the source of the materials. So battery factories are very interesting for Indonesia and also the companies. So what do you think about the expansion plans of Tesla in Asia and Indonesia?
I think it's important. A big part of Tesla's industry-leading gross margin is localizing the supply chain. So like Giga Shanghai is, I think, more than 90% localized. Giga Berlin is getting there as well. And localizing imported supply chain is one big one. Second is, as Elon Musk reveals the master plan part 3, they need extreme scale. Extreme scale means we need to secure as much supplies as we can. And actually, someone was sharing recently in a video podcast that it's not technically the supply that is a concern. So example, like North America, US and Canada actually would have enough nickel or supply for most battery, but the whole licensing to get the permit to actually start mining takes up to 10 years. That's a key bottleneck. Actually, it was one of the VPs of the batteries I shared in a recent interview. With Indonesia, they could potentially start the licensing of mining faster than 10 years. But then critics would then say, what's this doing for the environment? Is this good for the environment? How many homes does this displace? What happens to the nearby forests? So I think those are going to be concerns. And the hard part is to differentiate the real legit concerns with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Because it's a very easy smokescreen. Oh, Tesla is not trying to be green, but look at what they're doing in Indonesia, mining nickel. So I think that's something that Tesla will need to solve for. And the tension here is, you'll see, especially on Twitter, many people say Tesla needs at least some sort of proactive team, whether you call it public relations or something else, to just manage perceptions and communications. People like us were doing that as outsiders. But sometimes you still need a Tesla source of truth to prove or disprove certain facts.
Yeah, 100%. But what I think about, because you mentioned the PR team, many companies, and we are used to hear PR departments talk about stuff. It would be good to confirm or deny claims that floating around, but it's also a good strategy how Tesla does it right now, which is just executing. I mean, they have to be truthful with that, and people will see that if they, for example, like SpaceX provided Starlink for the Brazilian government, or has projects with Brazil with Starlink, also for the connection in the forests. And
yeah,
that what makes everybody think of sourcing wood, and they really cut down the Amazonian rainforest. That's like controversial then, because we don't know the details. What was it about? And people start to speculate. So I know that PR departments are very important, but I still think that they really have to be truthful and look at the nickel mining process and really pressure also for environmental protection there, and say, okay, when we do that, we have to do that. And like they did in Berlin, they cut down trees, but they plant trees somewhere else. So they just shift everything.
So my challenge here is, I'll challenge this to Elon Musk or the Tesla team, is things don't need to be binary. It doesn't need to be, I either have a PR team all in, invest a lot, or I don't. So like what Elon Musk likes to say a lot about SpaceX, there are a lot of problems on Earth. 99% of our resources should be focused on solving problems here. We just need 1% to make us a multi-planetary species. Same thing for Tesla. 99.9% of all your resource can be focused on execution. But what's the harm in 0.1% of your resource on just communicating an idea? Just hire one person like Rob Mauer from Tesla daily. Let him be your PR person.
Yeah,
All you need is just one person or two people. You don't need a whole department of 100 people.
that's right.
That
Yeah,
0.1% investment would probably yield you at least 5% benefit. Far outweighs the cost.
yeah, you are totally right.
That's one
Yeah,
perspective.
that's very interesting. Rob Mauer would be very good at that because he's so balanced. He's not
Yeah.
too emotional. He's
Yeah.
very straightforward, and he bites his tongue before he says something that is not clear. So he really does his research. I'm not the way. I'm very emotional. I'm talking like assumptions and everything, and people also criticize that. "Oh, that's not true what you said. So I have always to put a disclaimer on top of my head that not everything I say with passion means that it's true or something. Maybe sometimes information changes and I realize, oh, I was wrong there. Yeah, you're totally right. That would be a great approach. Just give him a lot of money and then he just maybe he does that. That's a good idea. But so we talked about the competition, about the expansion in Indonesia, for example. So what do you think what's next for Tesla, especially in Asia? What do you see? What do you observe in Singapore and the neighboring countries?
I think for Asia Pacific, even the boring fundamentals are okay. So let's have one or two more gigafactories outside of China just to diversify and make sure that you're not overly reliant. Because to me, Tesla's biggest threat is the Chinese government. Why? It's a potential risk because of security for both Tesla and SpaceX. Elon Musk runs SpaceX. From a political standpoint, from a Taiwan standpoint, from a global landscape, there's fair bit of political risk. And we've seen in the past few years, the Chinese government, if they say something's going to happen, it's going to happen not 2 days from now, but 15 minutes from now. It's going to happen. You may not even be told it's going to happen. It happens, then you read the news about it tomorrow. So I think Giga Shanghai is very effective in what it does, and they're expanding it for right reasons. But the rest of Asia Pacific can be served by just normal gigafactories. Thailand is a great place. It's Southeast Asia's largest car market by far. A lot of automotive production is there. And the country's government, they know that ICE is transitioning to EVs. They want to support EV industry. That's why they have so many more EV chargers in Thailand as well. Or even South Korea could be another great hub. Just like how when Tesla first said, we're going to build a gigafactory in Berlin, people will be like, you're insane. You want to go to the hornet's nest? It's been hard. They wanted to open earlier. They open now. But as Elon likes to say, right, his companies, they turn the impossible into the late. It may not always be on time, but from the impossible, it goes late. So I think gigafactories, South Korea, Thailand, that will help us give a good foundation for Asia Pacific, which is still 60% of the world's population. So I think that will keep them busy for the next 2 to 3 years. And Tesla has the cash flow to afford it. Money is not the problem for them. In fact, they have the opposite problem. Too much money. You see Gary Black on Twitter saying, hey, why don't we do some buybacks? Other people saying, no, 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 invest in factories. And then you see all those conversations. After that, I think that for Tesla's robotic ambition, they could consider places like Singapore. The tension with China is that because the applications for robotics and AI can be used for a lot of purposes. A car is a car, but robotics and AI can be used for military and defense purposes. A place like Singapore that's more neutral, Singapore has to be everyone's friend. It's like the Switzerland of
Yeah,
Asia
yeah,
Pacific.
I've heard about that. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's got to be everyone's friend. IP protections are very strong, which is why Dyson manufactures their motors, which is their core patent, their core IP, in a factory in Singapore. And people will say Singapore's labor costs are high. That's okay. Just bring Tesla bots to make stuff here. Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. Dyson wanted to make an EV. Also, I think they wanted to do that also in Singapore, but they scrapped the plans. But they really like did that 6 years, try to go for it, and it was
Yes.
around 2005, 15, 16, something like that, or 17, I don't know. But they scrapped the idea. But maybe they they will come back someday, and we have cleaner streets because maybe it sucks up the dirt from the street also, like a
Yeah, you
vacuum.
buy vacuum attachments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting what you said. Like also the territorial expansions China is looking at, the South Chinese Sea, for example, that they want to expand. They have conflicts with Indonesia Indonesia also, and with every neighboring country more or less, because they also want to have dominance over the sea there. And Singapore also invests much in military, I think. I don't really know, but I assume so. In defense especially. And I also think that they don't have to be so dependent on China. It's important to have China as a partner. Also, quality control is very good in China. I assume also in Singapore, very high tech. Also, that is why it was so interesting for me that Tesla wasn't sold there. So the adoption was so... That's crazy for me to hear. That was one of the big takeaways I had from this interview also. How do you think it will unfold from the time horizon? So you said maybe Tesla could, or it would be a strategic good plan to expand in Asia, to be less dependent and more lean also in the distribution. How do you think the time horizon would be about that? Would they do that more 2026 or after 2028? Is it too late then, or what do you think?
I think it'll be earlier. So I think the gigafactories for, let's say, Thailand and South Korea could be announced by next year and then start construction in 2024. We all know, those who follow Tesla, that Giga Berlin can expand. We can actually double, triple the capacity. Giga Texas can expand a lot. You can 4x capacity with all the land that they have, and they're buying more land. Giga Shanghai is expanding. So Tesla could actually be on track to grow production by 50% year on year in the next 2 to 3 years without any new gigafactories. But beyond that, they will need new gigafactories. So different locations. In Europe, some people say, how about Eastern Europe? How about UK, for instance? And also US East Coast. So I think that's going to happen. Now, a lot of your viewers may be wondering, we're talking Asia, but what about India? 1.4 billion people there. That's been a tension for many companies, not just Tesla. So if you look at the facts, if you look at the premium car sales like BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, in India compared to Singapore, Singapore sells more than the whole of India. So now Singapore is really an extremely small car market, but we sell more cars at Tesla's price range than the whole of India. You've probably got to sell a car at the 10K USD price range, 20K USD price range to really make a scalable impact. So I think that's the tension of India. The other challenge is the building a factory. Elon asked for lower tariffs for imported EVs. That has not worked out for them yet. Apple had challenges for a few years before even opening an Apple store in India. And they tried manufacturing in India. Sometimes it works out, sometimes there are challenges as well. So Apple's been diversifying their own production outside of China to Vietnam, to India, and other places. So I think India is a huge market in theory, but in practice, it's probably going to take a while. So I think that's the tension.
Yeah, I also think Gali from Hyperchange also invested in Archimoto. It's a small EV scooter company where the entry price is not as high, more or less. And I think those kind of startups really can sell stuff in India if the tariffs are not as high, because India protects their market very much and say like 40%, 30% import tax. Which is crazy. Then the prices are too high to compete with the local brands. India also has some EV startups that also produce for the Indian market more, a little bit cheaper cars, more entry-level cars. And I think, Tesla has a challenge there. And because Elon Musk is so focused on safety that he says, like, no, we never will do motorcycles, for example. I think half of Asia was like, oh, because especially Vietnam, for example, you really go by scooter. So electric scooter would be, or even maybe the cyber quad would be something to go around. But you really need scooters, and scooters are also very polluting. The air quality is not as good with all those scooters, especially in Vietnam. So
actually, you bring a good point here, Yan, on the scooters. So a lot of urban transportation is still done by bikes or scooters, and the EV revolution is not just to improve the air quality, but also to dramatically reduce noise pollution. Most of noise pollution comes from heavy vehicles and motorcycles or scooters. So if Tesla is not doing it, Elon has said himself he almost died riding a bike when he was younger. So he's not going to build a bike. Someone else needs to do it, and I think it would serve the rest of the world well.
Yeah, I think Piaggio, for example, could do something. Many Chinese brands also. The Japanese Honda also produce scooters, for example, very big in scooters. So that's something also the viewer maybe doesn't think about. Like, it's always about cars, but I think this is also a huge disruptive market. And I also think building a scooter isn't as hard as building a car. You don't have to have high-tech software or something. You could put some safety things in or GPS trackers if somebody steals the scooter or something. But yeah, or navigation system, the display, maybe many startups really can do something like that. I think that's not as hard to do. But this is also a big factor that I think is a little bit overlooked, that the two-wheeled EV side should also be looked at, because for India, for Vietnam, for example, or for many Asian countries, they really love scootering and going around by scooter. Sadly, Tesla doesn't produce scooters, but they have their core products, and maybe the robot is more important afterwards if you want to focus on that, and AI especially. But for the last bit of the interview, because I think we touched on every point that I wanted to touch on, and I really appreciate your view, Darren, for the Asian market, because I think it's an overlooked thing in the Tesla community as well, because we always look at Europe and the US because they are so huge market. Now you see the market besides China is waking up now. So that's very interesting also for you. That's why I have to say again, please subscribe to Darren Young's channel and look at his videos, because he will keep you updated from the Asian side there. He has very great interviews. But for the last question I have, what you see happening with Tesla for the future globally even. What is for you the biggest topics right now that you focus on or you investigate more?
The future is the robotics manifesting through Tesla bot or whatever future version it comes up with. And as Elon says, like, their biggest impact is not going to be on solving autonomy, it's going to be on solving labor. Labor is a far bigger market than the $6 trillion car market. Self-driving cars, how much does it change society and life? I mean, it's automating things. It's like a washing machine. Whether you manually wash your clothes or a washing machine, you are still fundamentally the same society. But automating labor, that's going to change what we think society is.
Yeah.
You don't need to do work on construction unless you choose to. If you want to pursue liberal arts, free up people to go to deep space, to go to the moon, to go to Mars, to pursue crazy ideas, bigger bets. I think society is going to change in a much bigger way with robotics and Tesla's push to AI rather than being number one in the EV market. I don't think that's exciting for Elon anymore as well. He loves solving really tough problems. Like solving for EVs, it's practically solved. We're just seeing it play out right now. Or as you see in Dave Lee's curve, right, all the S-curve, EVs is done. It's time for the next phase. And I think where Tesla recruits people, Elon has said that AI Day is about recruiting talent. He's not running an EV day because talent's going to join Tesla for, I want to make a pickup truck that's 10% better. Come on, no one wakes up for that. And when we think of the steps ahead, I think that's what's going to inspire a lot of people to want to work for Tesla, because as you talk to some people at Joe Justice, why do people spend so many hours here? Why do they almost live a Tesla life? Because they can see that even just 3 to 5 years in this company, I'm part of a very big change in this world. So I'm very excited for that. I don't think people see that now, and that's okay. I don't think we should force people to see Tesla that way. I think most people would enjoy Tesla being the great EV company, great cars, safest cars in the world, and that's okay.
Nice words you said there for the end of this episode. I also totally agree with you on the things you said. And I hope that people start to look a little bit more into the company and less into the headlines, and just listen to engineers, listen to Darren Young's channel, for example, and looking at what people say working there before you judge from the outside. And I think Tesla has a lot of challenges ahead of them also. Like, for example, in Germany, it's about the regulations and about the unions. In Germany, because unions are very implemented in every company, it's normal here to have a union. But the unions think with old thinking. I think it's very social thinking, which is good, but they don't see that Tesla employees can get a compensation with stocks. So something like that is not as, they are not as awake They just look at, oh, how's the salary, how's this, and something like that. So there are challenges.
Elon Musk was saying on Twitter, I think a couple of months ago, if you take a subject matter where you are an expert on and you look at how the media reports it, it's not that they have bad intentions. Sometimes they just don't know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
And so an innocent mistake can actually totally transform the meaning of something, especially if you're an expert in a certain area and you look at it in that view. And a lot of the challenge with truth is that the same truth can be perceived in so many ways. I could say that Tesla's challenge in Germany is a strength. Why is it a strength? Because if it's so hard for Tesla to overcome the local environmental concerns unions, can you imagine a Chinese car company opening a factory in Germany? No way. Forget it. Geely opening a factory in Stuttgart? No way. Yeah. And if they want to serve Europe, they've got to manufacture locally. Otherwise, they won't be cost competitive with Tesla or the German automakers.
Yeah, interesting. I think their strategy is buying out companies, maybe more, because then they let them operate. Some Chinese company bought Volvo, for example, and Polestar. They just let them operate.
True.
Maybe that's the strategy that they do. And there are talks that Mercedes will be bought or something. I've heard about that rumor, but I'm not confirming that right now because I haven't looked into it. This could be possible. Everybody says, oh, in Germany, no way, this will never happen. It's a public traded company. What do you think? Somebody, even Tesla could buy Mercedes. But the government will step in, I think. No way. No way that Mercedes is bought. That's too precious for Germany.
Agree.
I don't think they will do it, but many companies are in Chinese hands right now. So they went on a shopping spree around the globe, and yeah, we will see what the future unfolds. It's very interesting times we live in now. But you're totally right with the robots and with the AI. That is the main thing you should watch out for. So to everybody, please check out Daren's channel and watch Tesla's AI expansion and especially the automation and robotics part of Tesla, which is very interesting. So Daren, I'm really grateful to have you on. If anybody has questions, please put them in the comments down below or write Daren also on Twitter. I've leave the links in the description below. Yeah, Daren, thanks for your time.
Yeah, and you've been a great host. Thank you for having me.
So there's only one thing to say now to everybody. Goodbye.
Auf Wiedersehen.